What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 updates. Firstly, Bungie officially announced their reveal for Renegades and Ashen Iron. That will be coming next Tuesday, and we've got details on what to expect from the live reveal, so we'll cover that. There are also a couple of live updates to the game, and heavy metal specifically, that we'll round up here, and reportedly, a series of sandbox changes, which are getting players riled up. I actually missed this update yesterday because I was asleep. We'll cover the changes. It also teases some new exotics for Ashen Iron, as well as other new content components, so you'll have to give me your impressions down in the comment section, but now let's get into it. First up, next Tuesday, September 9th at 9 AM Pacific, the developer team will preview Renegades and the Ashen Iron update, so that'll be 1 hour before Ashen Iron officially launches. I imagine the majority of the reveal will focus on Renegade since it is an expansion, and I suppose at least with this one, we're getting a reveal fairly early, at least compared to things like Edge of Fate. So I'm very curious to see what the new content will look like, and I'm hoping there will be much more focus on new content given that Bungie put a lot of resources into systems when the Edge of Fate dropped. While many of those systems still need tuning, I'm still hopeful that Renegades will essentially be a larger new content offering than what we had with Edge of Fate. So let us know if you're looking forward to that, and I'll keep you posted. Otherwise, an additional update, Bungie say the heavy metal launch node on the tower map has been removed. Players can still access the activity via Crucible Ops or the heavy metal event home on the play tab. And this is because the tower node was dropping old gear, so just something to keep in mind as we head into the game. Next up though, Bungie posted this article regarding sandbox changes coming in Ashen Iron. We'll go over some of the highlights here, and yes, some components that players in the community are not entirely happy about. The first one is deterministic recoil, and they say at the moment sometimes weapons can feel harder to control or need a recoil stat to actually improve the weapon, and they say therefore we're removing deterministic recoil and we'll be looking at other options in the future. They will however retain it on Vigilance Wing, as they believe in that instance it fulfills their goals. Otherwise, on heavy burst sidearms, they're reducing the range stat by 15 on Forgiveness, stating that it was a bit of an outlier when it comes to the total stat package. On aggressive SMGs though, they're increasing the ADS damage fall-off scaler from 1.4 to 1.5 times, essentially to allow it to better compete with sidearms, spreadshot hand cannons, and other SMG archetypes. Then on spreadshot hand cannons, they're increasing damage versus combatants by 8%, and that PvE buff is to essentially offset the nerfs that should affect stats. So they're adding a 0.1 second delay after firing before you can melee to prevent near simultaneous damage events, increasing pellet spread by 5%, and reducing flinch dealt to players by 30%. Hopefully it won't feel too bad in PvE content, and it should essentially start to nerf them for PvP, although I'm sure some players will want more. On sniper rifles though, they're increasing the ammo per brick pickup in Crucible from 1 to 2, so that's a general buff. Plus for crossbows, crossbow bolts now have a heavy ammo radar marker, visible only to the player who owns them. They've also updated the weapon icon tray, obituary, and kill feed to reflect the crossbow's unique silhouette. In terms of some new stuff that we'll get for Ashen Iron, they do tease which slots some of the new exotics are going to drop into, as well as some new featured exotics that they're adding for the update. So we're going to get a new kinetic slot weapon, as well as a new heavy weapon. Those will be exotics, of course, one coming from an exotic quest as part of Ashen Iron, the other being part of the Season Pass. Plus we can see, in terms of featured gear, they'll additionally add Mida Multitool and Sturm, as well as Trinity Ghoul, Buried Bloodline, Darcy, Heart Shadow, Sleeper Simulant, and Tractor Cannon to the featured list. And yes, I totally agree, featured gear is not really a good thing for the game overall. And if anything, it will get more annoying in Renegades when all of our newly earned stuff from the past few months will lose that featured component. I'm not really looking forward to it, and I'm hoping Bungie realise that it's not a great system in general. Interestingly though, with Mida Multitool being added as a featured weapon, they say they're seizing an opportunity to incorporate new pairing functionality with Mida synergy weapons. So I'm kind of wondering, are Bungie going to add more Mida synergy weapons in Ashen Iron? I'd take it as a strong possibility that that'll be the case based on this, but there'll be a new trait for Mida, which is Mida software package, and getting enough kills with it will now provide various buffs and an incremental PvE damage bonus after reaching certain thresholds. So at stage 1, it gets 25% faster handling and ADS speed, as well as 5% PvE damage increase. Stage 2 adds plus 15 range and stability, as well as another 5% PvE damage. Stage 3 will increase 15% aim assist and magnetism ranges, with a 5% cone angle and 5% PvE damage. Then at stage 4, shots will detonate on impact. To be fair, that actually sounds pretty good. On top of that, they say weapons that have the Mida synergy intrinsic will also grant progress towards these buffs, and that'll be on par with the Mighty Multitool itself. But on death, we regress to the beginning of of the previous stage, and the radar while aiming functionality has been moved to the intrinsic. So that is an overall buff to Mida by the sounds of it, and a strong indication that there'll be more weapons that pair with Mida, which is going to be interesting. On the catalyst though, they're replacing no distractions with a brand new one, and when enemies are within close proximity and Mida multi-tool is in hand, you're granted enhanced radar resolution and improved reload speed. So that will be plus 20 to the reload stat and 15% reload scalar, with the buff lingering for a few seconds once enemies are no longer close. They're also slightly increasing the movement speed bonus on it, so again a general buff to Mida there. On the Sturm though, again, indications that there may be new weapons that pair up with this, but in terms of buffs, Storm and Stress, they say rapid kills with Together Forever weapons within 3 seconds of each other now load Sturm extra overcharged shots, and primary ammo Together Forever weapons load even more Sturm overcharged shots, and the overcharge damage has been tuned as well. Previously, this was roughly a 261% damage buff in PvE and a 78% buff against players. The new values though will be 260% against bosses, 280% against mini-bosses and champions, 300% against minors and majors, and 75% against players. They've also reduced the maximum Sturm overcharge to 25. The prior cap was 99, but they say it wasn't realistic, and at the new limit, players are encouraged to use them as they'll have them far more often. They also say for the Accomplice trait, final blows with Sturm overcharged shots now increase the magazine capacity of Together Forever weapons until death, capped at 100% of the base mag, so that's good. Plus, Sturm gets a new catalyst, and kills with Sturm overcharge shots will grant charges that provide a 50% ready and stow speed scaler for Sturm and Together Forever weapons. 1 stack is consumed upon readying Sturm with a maximum of 6 stacks. In addition though, some pairing changes here. Lucky Pants now buffs the damage of Sturm overcharge shots, but at a lower than normal rate, so it'll be 110% buff at a legally modded holster times 10. They've also increased Sturm's ammo generation stat from 30 to 80, and fixed an issue where overcharged shots were not playing the impact VFX. And they say a lens flare is now visible on opposing players' Sturm in PvP, while they have the active Sturm overcharged shot. So given that this is probably going to see a lot more use, Bungie wanted to communicate that players actually have that available to them in PvP, which is a good idea, I guess. They're actually applying that to Eriana's Vow, as we can see right here. Give me your thoughts about those pairing weapons. Definitely one of the better components of this update. And moving on to new exotics for Graviton Spike, they say, we're taking a small swing, placing a stricter timer on both its base trait and its unique catalyst to activate. This is primarily focused on changing it for Crucible, so they're reducing the time to gain overcharged shots from 20 to 7 seconds, as well as reducing time to gain temporal alignment catalyst buff from infinite down to 7 seconds. So I think in most PvE encounters, this probably won't be a significant nerf because there's a lot of stuff to kill, but it is far more likely to impact it in PvP. Give me your thoughts about it. On Taraba, they're increasing zoom to 16, but they are reducing the Peacekeeper's bonus damage when using Taraba with Ravenous Beast active from 100% down to 70%. On Hawkmoon, they say Lucky Pants now buffs the damage of Paracausal Shot, but at a lower than normal efficacy, which is a 50% buff at a legally modded holster times 10. And something interesting on New Land Beyond, they say the perk counter previously capped at times 100, but it will now stack up to 999 for bragging rights. The actual increase of damage will still cap at 100, and there's no change to that damage, but they're basically allowing players to get it up to 999 to feel satisfied, I guess. Lord of Wolves is getting nerfed, so they're decreasing Release the Wolves damage versus bosses by 20%. Keep in mind Lord of Wolves was already nerfed, and given that the weapon isn't currently featured, I'm not sure this is really necessary at this precise moment, as people are often selecting other things instead of Lord of Wolves anyway. It's been a very strong weapon, so it isn't necessarily surprising, but bit of a shame there. Otherwise, on Grand Overture, they're reducing the total reserves for the weapon from 58 to 48, but the catalyst, Omega Strike micro-missiles, will no longer require direct hits for enemies to explode, and enemies killed by the blast radius will now also trigger the explosion. So smaller reserves, but improved catalyst behavior. Otherwise, on Queenbreaker, they're reducing damage versus bosses by 8%. Again, I feel like this has seen a few changes over the last couple of years. They're also reducing the decreased charge rate via combat sites by 15%. Again, at the moment, I'm not sure that many people are really using Queenbreaker a lot, so not sure it's a necessary nerf at this precise moment. It may be a reaction to the usage rates that it actually had before Edge of Fate. But yeah, I'm not sold on that one. Otherwise, for Outbreak Perfected, Barodiad, and Hierarchy of Needs. On Outbreak, they're reducing the damage-based Recharger super contribution and slightly reducing the nanite damage-based Supercharger contribution. So basically a nerf to super energy gains on that in general. On Baradiad, they're slightly reducing the damage-based recharge contribution of non-Seekers and reducing the damage-based recharge or super contribution via Taken Seekers. And on Hierarchy, they're reducing the super contribution via Guidance Ring Arrows. It isn't actually clear exactly how much this will be. Hopefully it isn't really significant because it's nice for some of these exotics to actually feel exotic in more ways than one. Give me your thoughts below. They're also fixing the issue with Thunderlord Catalyst where it was refilling more ammo than intended, so not a damage change, but it will ultimately be a nerf from its current position. On Whirling Ovation though, they're increasing the rate at which Anticipation builds, so a fairly optimized damage rotation utilizing Whirling Ovation should see the Anticipation meter fill time decrease from 10 seconds to 8 seconds. And less optimized damage rotations will see a more significant fill time decrease, so bit of a buff there for Whirling Ovation, although I don't think it's a significant one really. But then get on to weapon perks. For Burning Ambition, I think it's actually an improvement, so the time to activate threshold is reduced from 2.5 seconds to 2 seconds. On the enhanced version of the perk, it goes from 2.25 to 2, so that's a buff. On the magazine-based hit activation threshold though, they're reducing it from 60% of the mag to 55%, so it will activate sooner. The enhanced version of that is unchanged, but when calculating the lower of above thresholds, the perk no longer rounds down, and enhancing this now reduces the hits to activate by a flat 1 hit, so technically a small buff to that perk. They're also adjusting enhanced benefits on a series of other perks. So for Dragonfly, they're removing the +5 reload speed, but adding plus 10% damage to the explosion. On Cluster Bombs, they're removing the +5 blast radius, but adding 10% damage. On Reservoir Burst, they're removing the stability boost, but adding 10% enhanced shot damage. And Magnificent Howl will also lose its +5 reload speed, but they're adding 5% damage to each enhanced shot. On Eye of the Storm, again they removed the stability boost, but they added plus 10% effectiveness to all of the Eye of the Storm benefits. Flash Counter loses its +5 inventory size, but they've added an additional 1 second to disorient time. Otherwise on Chain Reaction, they've removed +20 inventory size and added plus 10% damage to the explosion. The inventory benefits of Chain Reaction were actually reasonably significant on some weapons like Mint Retrograde, so if you're running that on Mint, it will probably come out feeling worse off overall, despite the increase to the damage. But finally, Headstone loses +5 stability, and they've added new behavior where precision kills always generate a large stasis crystal. On Chill Clip though, stability boost goes, but players can now create slowing detonations from a lower percentage of the magazine. So a mixed bag on those enhanced benefits there. Some of those minor tune-in things I feel like probably weren't necessary again, but give us your thoughts below. On Temporal Blast, Bungie say the mod is providing a wealth of extra damage, particularly on explosive weapons, and to make space for some other seasonal mods in builds, we want to bring this down a bit, so it no longer gains progress on splash damage. It also sees reduced blast damage impulse by 66%, and Bungie say that will affect heavy weapons like a crossbow or rocket more than it will special weapons. I think that is a shame as well. I probably would prefer Bungie to buff some of the other options, especially given that they are temporary mods, they won't go on forever. So give me your thoughts on all of the weapon stuff. It's definitely a mixed bag. There are some good changes in there, but some which are less good, and I think some which almost feel like a bit of a waste of time in terms of investing into very minor tuning adjustments on things. But for featured armor, they'll be expanding the exotic offerings, so Younger Hamkara's Spine, Frosties, Stronghold, Hazardous Propulsion, Chromatic Fire, and Controverse Hold will become featured in Ash and Iron. Bungie are reworking the exotic Stronghold though, so the Perfect Guard HUD buff now appears as a bar and stacks no longer drop off 10 seconds after blocking damage, they persist until they're spent. Blocking larger amounts of incoming fire gains stacks at a slower rate, while blocking lower amounts of incoming fire gains stacks at a faster rate, and landing a direct hit on a light or heavy sword attack consumes 50% of your Perfect Guard charge, exhausting enemies hit and instantly healing you and nearby allies. And at max stacks, they say it will now fully refill your sword energy instead of offering infinite guard duration. This enables back-to-back heavy attacks or allows immediate ability to block again. And now that it fully heals you and nearby allies, it no longer grants restoration. It will also gradually gain up to plus 50 guard resistance and endurance based on the number of perfect guard stacks, instead of the previous 100 guard resist. And it will gain a 30% damage reduction for 1.5 seconds upon exiting sword guard, instead of gaining resist times 4 while blocking. On top of that, the walking speed boost will work in all directions instead of only working forwards. For hunters though, on the Sight Arachnes, while Woven Mail is active, it will now also return health on defeating an enemy, so survivability will improve there. They also say for the spirit version of that perk on exotic class items, it mistakenly has had a nerf in Edge of Fate, and in a future patch, the duration of Woven Mail provided, which was reduced from 10 seconds to 6, will be reverted. Lastly though, for Warlocks on Chromatic Fire, they say they're reworking it to be less dependent on your subclass, so detonation radius on precision kinetic final blows increases by 36%. It also no longer applies keywords based on equipped super, but non-precision final blows also produce a detonation. On the Controverse hold though, they say they're buffing the energy return and tuning it by grenade type to be aligned with how quickly the grenade cooldown lasts. So charged grenades will now apply weaken, and vortex grenade gains have been increased slightly but can no longer be activated twice. Feel like it probably didn't need that because Vortex isn't really the go-to for a lot of players, necessarily. Otherwise, on Axiom Bolts, Handheld Supernova, and Scatter Grenade, all gains have received moderate increases. So, like I said, kind of a mixed bag really of changes there that we're getting. Some of the adjustments are straight up buffs that are positive. Other things feel a bit nitpicky, and of course even range into nerfs in some instances, which I know a lot of players are not mega happy about. I would say overall, there's been a lot of focus on sandbox changes that Bungie are doing here. I'm not sure if some of the reactions, like I said, are to things that were going on before Edge of Fate or very early in Edge of Fate. Nice to get a couple of teasers regarding new exotics and weapons that pair up like Minor Multitool and Sturm. Obviously something's going to be going on there. We might get some new things introduced or a reintroduction of the mini tool and things like that. So some interesting components, and I'm sure we'll get more of a preview of that in the next few days. No doubt though, given that we generally want the game to be more fun, obviously we hope that the reward changes Bungie have lined up in Ash and Iron will land well and make the game feel better in general, as otherwise that's why players kind of get frustrated at things that sound like broadly nerfs, right? So we'll see how it plays out, but give me your thoughts down below. For this video, that's what we've got to talk about. I'll keep you posted when we get to the TWID later. Maybe Bungie can give us some more exciting and positive insights regarding Ash and Iron, as well as progression in the game. That's what I'm looking out for the most. Bungie certainly need to calm nerves on that front. If you've enjoyed the video though, or found it useful, a rating really does help me out. Plus, be sure to get subscribed so I can keep you posted with more Destiny content. But for now, I hope you guys have an awesome day.